Morning, Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're concluding our study of the book of the life of Peter today, just by talking about some large lessons that we want to take away. Next time, we're going to begin a new study. We haven't been in the Old Testament for a while. We're going to go and look at a wonderful book, one of the Minor Prophets, which has an enormous lesson for us. And I think since we'll be um, studying this during our election season, an important lesson for us to remember. And that is that the Lord is in his holy temple. God is in charge. And it's something that Habakkuk has to learn. And I love that book, and I hope you're going to love it too. We'll start that study next time. But let's not leave Peter just yet. There are three big lessons that I want us to learn from Peter's life. The first lesson that I want us to learn from Peter's life was just the magnetism that connected Peter and Jesus. And we talked about this when we looked at those times when Peter left his boat. He left his boat after the great catch of fish. He got out of the boat to walk to Jesus on the water. And then after the second great catch of fish, he left his boat to become a missionary of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And in every one of those incidents when he's leaving his boat to be with Jesus, to follow Jesus. He cannot be separated from Jesus. Even after the garden, even after he tried to split Eutychus's head wide open and he misses and cuts off his ear, and everybody flees, who's the one apostle? It's not John. Who's the one apostle who follows and is there at the high priest's house? He was there to deny Jesus 3 times, but he was there. There is a magnetism. Peter, he is drawn to Jesus, and he doesn't really even try to fight the magnetic pull. Um, I don't want to use a negative example, but it's like the Death Star pulling in the Millennium Falcon, It's the tractor beam, and it's stronger than he's able to resist, and they don't even try to resist. Well, that's the way Peter and Jesus are connected. And it is that love of Jesus, and that goes beyond anything maybe we mean when we use the word love. Something I don't know what to call it other than gravity, other than magnetism. This pull that he cannot resist. And I'm not saying he doesn't lose his ability to choose, because we see him make plenty of mistakes, but he's just drawn to Jesus, and I think that's huge to learn. Jesus said in John's gospel, "If I be lifted up, I'll draw all men to myself." Well, that was certainly true of Peter. I want us to see that Peter is always learning and growing. Um, you know, he preached on the day of Pentecost. Um, he didn't get all that. He didn't get it. He said he got it when he went and preached to Cornelius, but he still didn't get all of it because Paul had to get in his face in Antioch. He's just a guy that continues to learn, um, and 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 is willing to learn and to evolve in his thinking, because it gets refined, not because it gets changed, but because he himself understands more clearly and gets wiser. And even though the faith is the faith once for all delivered, as Jude will call it, and the truth doesn't change, our understanding of it, our wisdom in relationship to it changes. And we have to be willing to see that and admit that we were wrong and do better with the truth, as Peter does throughout his life. And so there is that as well that I wanted us to notice about Peter. There's just a heart, a genuineness, that we've seen. He's much kinder and more complimentary in the things he says about Paul than any of the things Paul ever says about him. We noticed that. We noticed that recently. Paul says in the Corinthian correspondence, "I become all things to all men that I might win a few. To the Jews I become a Jew." Paul can do that. because he has lived in all those worlds. And so when Paul's on Mars Hill, he's on the Areopagus in Acts 17. He can be the philosopher when he's making his defense before King Agrippa in Acts 26. He can strike the pose and literally, quite physically, strike the pose of the man making his defense before the high council. Um, in Acts 22, when he talks to the Sanhedrin, he can speak to them as a rabbi trained under the feet of Gamaliel. He can do that. He can be different people at different times because they're all him. Peter is just Peter. He's not Peter the philosopher at one time and Peter the rabbi at another. He's just Peter. With all of his faults, with all of his impulsiveness, he's just himself. Someone who loves the Lord, someone who is willing to learn, someone who makes mistakes, someone who is just magnetically drawn to Jesus. And that's the most salient thing about his life. That's the most powerful force in his life, is this pull that Jesus has, this gravity that Jesus has to pull him next to him. And it's that, I think, most of all, that we take away from the life of Peter and that we want to have in our own lives. Okay, thank you for joining me for this study today and for our larger study about the life of Peter. I hope that we love him better, know him better for these last several weeks that we've spent time with him. We're going to go to the book of Habakkuk. See if you can find that in the Old Testament. One of the minor prophets next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.